Cole Ragans and the Royals came to an agreement on a 3-year deal last night. Let's break down the details of that deal next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15, and you can find us on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Ron Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. If you're a first-time listener and you want to know a little bit more about me and this show, we bring you 5 episodes a week, though this week it's actually going to be 7. We got the breaking news last night about the Ragans and Royals deal. We're going to bring you an episode tomorrow evening after we're back from the complex in Surprise. We'll be heading down there Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. We'll have tons of interviews, tons of content, and episodes every single day. So we're working a little bit overtime. Today's episode only going to be 15 minutes. That's all I have time for, but I wanted to make sure before I got down there, we got at least a little bit of some input on this Ragans and Royals deal. Got a couple people asking me about the details of this deal, and we're going to get to it in this 15-ish minute episode. But again, as for me, if you want to know who I am, I'm based in Kansas City, work at Sports Radio 810 WHB, do a lot of things over there. But when it comes to just this podcast, it's all Royals all the time, and usually 5 episodes a week. But as I just mentioned, working a little bit of overtime this weekend. So let's go over the details of this Cole Ragans contract extension. And when I say extension, it's not really an extension. That, I believe, last night was the confusing part for a lot of people. Cole Ragans was pre-arbitration, which the Royals wanted to not worry about the next couple of years of hassling over what he was going to be worth, what he was going to be asking for. We've seen that before in arbitration deals, and I believe the only Royal that had to go a little bit further into the process was Brandon Maurer, because the Royals set the price of what they thought he was valued at. He wanted much more than that, and they went to a hearing, and I don't believe he won that hearing. I believe the Royals still were able to pay him what they believed he was valued at. But when it comes to this deal, it's so many people going, well, how is it so cheap? A guy like Cole Ragans, who was a Cy Young finalist, you're telling me he's only going to be making around $4 million this year? And the total breakdown of this deal actually increases each and every year. He's got some incentives in there if he wins a Cy Young, if he's an all-star, this and that. But let me be very clear. This is not a typical extension. This is more so of buying out the 2 years of arbitration he'll have and giving him more money over those years in good faith, if you will. It's basically a good faith deal to show that, hey, we're invested in you. We believe in you. We want you to make more money over these next handful of years. But keep in mind, when you are up for an extension, keep in mind that we did that type of deal for you. We've seen teams do this before. In fact, there was a pretty big name pitcher earlier this offseason that did a deal similar to this, where you're thinking that makes no sense for the caliber pitcher that he is. Why is he only going to be making $4 to $5 million over the next 3 years? The Royals had Cole Ragans under team control for this same amount of time. They're giving him a pay bump. Think of it in the way of just getting a little bit of a pay increase at work. Hey, you're still working here under contract, but we're going to give you that raise. That's exactly what they did for Cole Ragans. And this is not to say that he will play out these 3 years under that same deal. If he goes out there in 2025 and puts together a Cy Young year, my guess is that next offseason, the Royals will restructure this deal and make it more of a worthy extension. Right, because the Royals take care of their players. We've seen that even going back to the Dayton Moore era. This gives them the insurance of, hey, we're not emptying our pockets here to keep you in Kansas City because you are under team control. You are a cheaper player on our payroll. But we got to see that what you did last year was not a fluke. And the unfortunate thing for Cole is that was his one and only full season at the big league level. He was phenomenal. He dominated. He certainly carried what he did at the tail end of 2023 into 2024. But if you're going to give a frontline pitcher a 5-6 year deal, you want to be sure that that's not the one-off. The foolish thing to do, and even though I would have been fine with the deal, but to give that mega deal when he's already pre-arbitration, he's making less than $1 million a year, and you empty the bank to go out there and keep him in Kansas City. You can make a deal like this, give him that pay increase, because he was set to make, I believe, less than $900K. I was looking at a tweet from Chris Clegg. He's a great follow out there on Twitter if you want to go out there and follow some great Royals content at Chris Clegg, MILB. With the 2 years of service time that he had, he was pre-arbitration and set to make $800K this year. This deal covers the first 2 years in arbitration. Even Garrett Crochet is set to make $3.8 million in arbitration too this year. So Kansas City avoids the arbitration process with Cole Ragans, and he makes more money. It's a win-win for both sides. And that tweet really puts it in perspective. Joel Penfield, One Royal Way, they do a great podcast over there. Josh Kaiser, same thing. They had similar comments of the term extension isn't quite necessary for a deal like this because they aren't extending him past the years they were going to have him. They're giving him a pay increase. They're giving him a boost over these next handful of years with the hopes that he carries on what he did in 2024 into 2025. And if he does that, that's when you circle back around to this contract and say, we're going to give you far more than $4 million a year. I mean, everybody knows in baseball that a guy like Cole Ragans is going to be worth upwards of 20 to 25 million a year. If he wins a Cy Young this year, it's closer to 25 million a year. And at his age, you would think that it's going to be in the 5 to 6 year range. And under John Sherman and JJ Piccolo, I do have confidence that if he were to put up another 200 plus strikeout season, be the ace of this rotation, the Royals are back in the postseason. I don't want to hear anymore about, well, he could get hurt. He's had Tommy John before. And as I have to clarify every single time, it was Tommy John, didn't fully recover, had to have the surgery again. It was not two separate Tommy John surgeries. So with Cole Ragans getting a deal like this, you give him that confidence of, we do believe in you. We don't want you making $800,000 this year and next year. You're our ace. We have dubbed you our ace. You gave us one of the most phenomenal postseason starts in our franchise's history in game one of the wild card against Baltimore. We know how talented you are. And at your age and the stuff you possess, we believe it's going to continue into this year and the year after that. But if you were to look at Cole Ragans and go the opposite approach, right? In the breakdown of this deal per Mark Feinstein, the signing bonus he gets is $250K. In 2025, he's set to make $1 million. 2026, he's set to make 4.5. And in the last year of this deal, he'd be set to make 7.5 million. And if Ragans wins the Cy Young in 2025 or 2026, that 2027 salary rises from 7.5 million to 8 million. So it's a slow increase going into 2025. That's $1 million. So he's making a little bit more than he would have made if no deal was struck. And as I said, if they took the approach of, well, what's the rush? Cole Ragans is under team control. He's making next to nothing. We're a small market team. We don't need to give him a pay increase when we're already paying him enough money to be on this roster. He's not making $50K or anything. He's making $800K. It's a lot of money to the average human. It's basically nothing at the big league level. And this is why I call it a good faith deal. You have somebody you have claimed to be your ace. He is the front line, the headliner for that rotation. Those guys don't make $800K. In fact, they don't even make $4 to $5 million a year. Those are the guys that make 20 to 25 million in the baseball world. But when you negotiate that contract, the reason I say it's good faith is you keep Cole Ragans happy right now. Not that he was unhappy or disappointed making what he did. I'm sure he was very satisfied to be just pitching on a big league rotation, an opening day starter, a game one postseason starter. Those are all great accolades. And you know that the money will be coming in, assuming you keep that up. We'll probably talk to Cole Ragans at some point here in the next few days about this deal, what he was expecting, what it means to him with the organization. But when you have that next go around of negotiations trying to work out an extension, you go back to this and you say, we take care of you. It wasn't the biggest pay increase. The utmost trust would have been giving him the 6-year deal worth $25 million a year after last year. But we know in baseball that's not always likely. And we've seen that come back to hurt teams when you look at one season and go, he's worth that because he's going to be that every single year of this contract. That's foolish to think. I mean, one of the contracts I can recall that the Royals did something similar, and not that this player was comparable at all to Cole Ragans, but highlighting the fact that if you take 1 year and your general manager and owner go, all right, we're going to give him the money because we believe in him. It was Hunter Dozier. Hunter Dozier, after the 2019 season, the Royals gave him that 3 to 4 year deal. And at the time, we all went, oh, that makes sense because Hunter Dozier looked really good in 2019. He hits the ball hard. He's a homegrown product. It was rewarding him for getting to the big leagues, having a good season. And we all know how that turned out with Hunter Dozier. Cole Ragans is far better of a talent and has a much higher ceiling than that. And he actually took his team to the postseason where Hunter Dozier never really did much after that 2019 season. But that's where I think you operate of, we want to give you a pay increase. We want to see you do it again. That's what I took away from this deal. We believe in you. We need to see you do that one more year before we invest that much money into you. That's the way business is run in baseball. And you keep somebody happy. You keep your payroll intact. You're not going well over the limit. I mean, as I said with the pay breakdown, 2025, he's got $1 million toward the payroll. Next year, it'll be 4.5. 2027 will be 7.5, $8 million if he wins the Cy Young. But I will say this. I'm not sold we're going to get to 2027 or even 2026 for that matter with this type of contract in place. If he does what he did last year again, as I've already mentioned in this shortened episode, if he gives you 200 innings, 220 strikeouts, a sub 3.3 ERA, he wins you 15 to 16 games. Cole Ragans is getting that deal restructured next offseason. He's going to get big money next offseason if he puts together another Cy Young type season, because 2 years is always going to be more of a sure thing than one. We have seen guys in baseball have an unbelievable run for 1 year. You give them the money, it might not always work out. I'm a huge believer in Cole Ragans. I believe what we saw last year and really the tail end of 2023 is the pitcher and the type of pitcher that he is. The talent he possesses, the stuff he has, that doesn't feel like a flash in the pan. That doesn't feel like a blip on the radar. That feels like the beginning of a great and storied career and somebody you can build your entire rotation around. The Royals did the right thing here. I strongly believe that a deal like this for a player like Cole Ragans goes a long way. Because keep in mind, Cole Ragans was not this guy that you drafted, top 5, and he got to the big leagues quickly, and you have this feeling of, man, this is just the beginning. And you do feel like it's just the beginning for Cole Ragans in Kansas City, but Cole Ragans was a guy that was a first-round pick out of college, goes to Texas, stays in state from where he played in college, and never really catches on with the Rangers, pitching out of the bullpen, pitching in the rotation, wasn't throwing as hard as he was, couldn't stay healthy, gets dealt in this deal in a year the Rangers go on to win the World Series, comes to Kansas City, they give him the opportunity. There's already the trust there of they've got belief. They acquired him when he was in the midst of a down year in Texas. So they believed in him from that point on, put him in the rotation, got him on the map, became the opening day starter, became a game 1 postseason starter. Now you give him a little bit more money. You buy out those arbitration years. You keep him under control for the same amount of time he was going to if you never did this deal, but you give him a pay increase. You give him a pay bump. That, to me, is a good deal if you want to work out a bigger extension moving forward next year or the year after that. This is just a little chess piece being moved. So if you're concerned or you're worried about, well, I don't get this deal at all, why would his agent agree to something like this? because he's making more money this year and next year and the year after that than he would have if no deal was put in place. It's likely that if a contract extension was talked about where we're going 6 years, $25 million a year, it's very possible the Royals just said, we're not going to do that right now. We need to see one more year of that. Then we can renegotiate that next offseason. But I like the deal. It's a win for both sides. It keeps Cole Ragans happy. It keeps the payroll intact. And it should keep the Royals happy because their ace is happy going into 2025. All right, that's going to do it for a shortened edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. We're going to be heading out to the airport, heading to Surprise, Arizona here in about an hour or so I got to get moving, but we'll have tons of content tomorrow. Follow along on my Twitter handle at JohnnyJ_15. I'll have interviews, I'll have quotes, I'll have video, all that type of stuff Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And we're bringing you episodes every evening on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.